Welcome back to How Soccer Explains Leadership. Thanks again for being a part of the conversation. And I am excited to tell you again that I got my co-host, Paul Jobson. I'm Phil Dark. And we have another fun episode in store for us today. We will be getting to Keeley Hagen here in a few minutes. She is the Colorado State soccer coach, and she's been so much more than that in her life. So we're going to get into that here in a few minutes. And but before that, Paul, how are you doing, man? I know that you're, soft Texas skin is not quite dealing with the cold weather very well. But as we were talking with Keeley before we recorded, she's at -0, as we found out there in Colorado. So how are you doing other than just, not being able to cope with the cold weather?
I'm just thankful I'm not in -0 weather and
Yes.
just dealing with 31, 30 degrees. My kids are like, please let it snow because they want to miss school. And I'm like, no, we can't miss school. We got to go to school. So yeah, it's great though. Like a little cold weather never really hurt anybody that bad, right? As
That's
long as I
true.
can stay indoors and keep my jacket on, I'm all good, man.
I think
So
cold weather has hurt people that bad, but not 31 degrees. I don't think so. I think I think you're going to be all right. I saw something cool real quick on, and we're not going to be able to get into it deeply, but I want to just kind of remind ourselves to talk about this really cool wrestling trip that your son had with Marcy. It looks like, I don't know if you were able to go on that as well, but Iowa State, something along those lines, and got to do something really cool. So, and
yeah, really, really cool opportunity to go up. Marcy went with Nash by herself. I stayed home with the other three hooligans here in Waco. But yeah, great opportunity through a connection that we have. Some great people to meet David Carr, who's an amazing, not only an amazing wrestler, but just an amazing human being. And Nash and Marcy had the opportunity to go up there and spend some time with them and watch a couple of wrestling matches and spent some time just really learning from just some amazing athletes up there and how they do and how they go about what they do. Just a great experience for a young athlete, and just blessed that he was able to do that. So just really cool. At some point, we'll get to talk through the wrestling stuff. I know we keep talking about it. This is a soccer podcast, but
yes.
how other sports relate to what we do and the leadership models that come through other coaches and other sports are some things we like to tap into at times. But yeah, just a great experience. Great people up there at Iowa State. So yeah, it was really an amazing trip for them. And I'm just learning all the highs of it all as we speak.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm excited to get into that, dig deeper at a different show than today. A couple other things we'll talk about. One of the things we've mentioned in the past is when my kids were little, I trained them at goalkeeping. I said, you never know when your team's going to need a keeper, an emergency keeper. So it's good to learn this position, even if you don't want to play it. Well, this year, my daughter has had now 3 stints at goalkeeper. She's a striker by trade, but she happened to be thrown in as a freshman varsity against our rival, league rival, and then at the Crosstown Cup, which is our, crosstown rival. So she was put in front of both of those games, which happened to be 2 of our bigger crowds. So I'm proud of her, but we'll be able to talk about that too. Just that
Yeah,
idea of, always being ready for what might be thrown at you. But that's not what
awesome.
we have today. Today we have Keeley Hagen, and Keeley, as I said, is currently the Colorado State coach, which is why I am sporting this shirt, which she handed me herself when I was out there doing disc training with her, which we're going to get into a little bit later.
Very nice.
But Keeley, how are you doing today?
Doing great. -0, just making us tougher over here, whether we want to be or not. So I'm really excited to be here. So thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. Well, we always talk about resilience and overcoming adversity on this show. So, this weather is just allowing us to put that into practice. So I'm glad you're all, dressed up warm. So hopefully you'll be comfortable for this conversation. And, the first thing we always love to talk with our guests about, and I mentioned a little bit of what you're doing now, but I want you to briefly share your story, including how you developed your passion for soccer, coaching, leadership, and how you ended up with that cool beanie of the Colorado State Ram on your head, out there coaching a group of great young women.
Yeah, I'll try to be brief. It's certainly been a journey of highs and lows, just as life is for most everybody. Started playing soccer when I was 4, grew up in Indiana, fortunate to have some really great coaches when I was young, specifically Ian Martin. He was a college coach at Butler for men's. So just right from the get-go, getting great coaching. Very successful club team back in the days when state championships were a thing, and winning regional championships. We won a regional championships and runner-up national championship. Decided to go to University of Tennessee to continue on, and had a wonderful experience there with head coach Ange Kelly. Was fortunate to win our first ever SEC championship there for Tennessee. But prior to that, which is probably a question later, there was a 2-year journey to try out for the U19 national team, and was fortunate to win a World Cup my sophomore year. And that was the same year that we won our SEC championship. Was fortunate to have a great career. I feel like I've checked the injury box pretty much my whole career. I'm not a very durable athlete, so that's kind of helped me now, being a coach, to be able to relate there. After Tennessee, went to Sweden for 2 years to play in their Premier League, and really enjoyed just being in another culture. I didn't learn a lick of Swedish because everybody wanted to practice their English, so don't ask me any Swedish words. So that was an awesome experience. Came back. This is kind of where my coaching began. Really just fell into the position because I was waiting for the what is now NWSL. It was the WPS to start up because the previous WSA had folded. And that was where the assistant coach at Tennessee decided she wanted to be a full-time mom. And I was there training in the off season, waiting for the league to start, and got offered the assistant coaching position under the stipulations with the athletic director that I could still play professional soccer. So don't think that would happen now, but I was able to do both. And so got drafted to go play at Sky Blue for the first year. And it was an extremely dramatic year. I feel like we talk about it. We should write a book on it, because we had 3 coaches, and it was like everything that went wrong, except we won a championship. So that was an incredible experience for that first year. And then second year was in Sky Blue again. And the last year I was in Atlanta. And that was the worst season I think I've had in my career. Tore my ACL that year as well. And then at that point, Coach Kelly got offered the position at Texas. And so I decided to hang up my boots, head to University of Texas in Austin. Was there for about 9.5 years. And then Colorado State called in June of 2021. And they checked some pretty big boxes, family being the biggest one here. My husband's family south of Denver, and got here, and it's a beautiful college campus. Feel like Colorado's a strong soccer state, and now I'm about 1.5 years in. So that's the nutshell from a soccer standpoint.
Yeah, one thing that it's implicit in what you said. Not a lot of people know that, but you were on the sideline with Paul when you were coaching against Baylor. And, I know Paul, he's yelling all the time, and he's just, tearing into people. And how was it to coach against the legend that is now the retired, guy basking on the beach, just drinking his pina colada in retirement now? What was it like to coach against this man? I just can't even imagine the pressure you felt when you were just standing next to him.
It was epic. I'll never forget it. Every moment we played Baylor, it was awesome. I mean, it's they did a great job there, and every game was a fight as usual. And I've played with his wife, against his wife, and so obviously we had a little bit of a prior relationship. But obviously, Paul, what you did at Baylor was phenomenal. And my time at Texas, I didn't win a championship, or we didn't win a championship there, and they won a few. And it was always a ruthless battle. And to be honest, I'm trying to get my teams to play as hard as his teams do. So that's something that we're working on doing here. But legendary, let's use that word.
100%. That's what
you guys
know.
You guys are totally full of it. I definitely appreciate that, Keeley,
so who's more intimidating? That's a question I really wanted. Who's more intimidating, Paul or Marcy?
Well, I'm gonna have to with Marcy, because I
okay.
avoided as many tackles and air balls as possible when playing against her. So you always have those players that make an impression throughout your career. And for as little time as I was at least around here with the national team, she certainly made an impression on me. And, I've never told her that. Hopefully she'll listen to this at some point, but definitely her. I mean, it's, you don't want to play against a player like her. And again, those are the great players out there because, hey, I want her on my team because I don't want to get into a tackle with her.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that was kind of a
Anytime
lie
there's a
detector
family
test
game,
there.
I'm on her team.
That was a lie detector right there. I just wanted to make sure if you didn't say Marcy there, then I would have known that I don't know if I could have trusted anything else you said the rest of the interview. So,
Listen, Keeley, hey, Phil, Keeley's smart enough to know that everybody out there knows who's the most intimidating
yes.
in my family. It's not me, it's definitely Marcy. So I think that a better question is who's more intimidating, Ange Kelly or Marcy Jobson? Those are two fierce women in the game of soccer for sure. So, but you're right. Those matches between Texas and Baylor were always, just always great matches. And obviously, we always had a ton of respect for you guys and how you guys went about what you were doing and building just a great program. Now is starting to see really a lot of the success, winning a couple of championships now, and you were part of just really building the base for what's going on now. And I'm excited to see what you're going to be able to do at Colorado State. I've always thought that once you got a head coaching job, it was going to be an amazing opportunity for young women to work with you. So I'm excited to see what you're going to be doing there.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. What kind of going into that, like as you're navigating now being a head coach, and we'll kind of get into the dynamics of what it means to be an assistant and what it means to be a head coach. But through all of that, have you kind of developed a why? Like what is your personal why?
Yeah, this was a great question that I got beforehand. And so I wanted to put some thought into it and not necessarily be, kind of a cookie cutter answer. I think a big part of who I am is my faith. And, I let recruits know that when they come in and, my team knows that's where I stand. Obviously, we have some restrictions that you fall at a public institution. And but for me, I'm in this position now as a head coach, and it is different being an assistant because the final decisions are on you. And ultimately it's to reflect the life of Jesus and be that model. And then also just to be a positive influence in young ladies' lives because I am trying to use the gifts that God has given me. And that's the platform that I have. And, that's a big responsibility, and I don't take that lightly.
Yeah, and that's it always excites me to hear that. I mean, Paul and I both obviously share the faith, and it's something that goes so much deeper than just a statement, right? Like, because when you say that, reflecting the life of Jesus and to be able to live that out, one of those things that we've been working on together that I've loved working on with you is the DISC modeling human behavior, and to see, we talked about that, Jesus is the perfect example of that, right? Like he knew exactly who he needed to be at any given moment with every person that he connected with. And, as humans, hopefully we're striving for that, right? Hopefully we're striving to understand ourselves, and we're striving to understand the people that are in our lives, right? And as coaches, we have a group of people that are in our lives regularly, day in, day out. And so that's something that, we did that. We did the DISC training in the preseason this last year. And I know you've taken it beyond where a lot of teams take it. And a lot of teams got to do the training and then do a little bit here and there. We talked with Carrie Sanchez. She's putting it into practice as well at Colorado College. But can you just talk about that a little bit? The DISC, the training that we did, really how you're using it with your team, and why you think it's important for coaches and players to understand it and use it with their teams.
Yeah, I think the buzzword is culture, and, it's hard to win games. And if your culture is not right, it's going to be that much harder. Another word people choose to use is chemistry. So for us, we know that's a big thing. You got to have talent to win. If you don't have speed, you're chasing it. There's those necessary parts. But the reason why I like DISC is first and foremost is just self-awareness. It's when people, do they want to talk about themselves? A lot of times they do, maybe sometimes they don't, but to learn about yourself and how you are the way you are, why the way you are. I think it's very interesting for each one of our young ladies to be like, oh, like this makes sense about me. And when they fill out the questionnaire, it's like, so every time Phil, you brought something up about a D, and the D's in the room like lit up because they're like, oh, I want to hear more about me. That just kind of caught on, and I could see that in the room. I think the second part, and this is the most important part, is once you learn about yourself and have that self-awareness, you start to think about how you speak to others and what do they need. And I think that's the next level of maturity that we want to continue to grow, with this particular team and culture. And hey, you need to be considerate about your tone and how you're speaking to people and how it may come off. And so those are the things that we've continued with, having little homework sessions of, hey, let's get the D's together and ask questions. And how do you like to talk on the field? And then let's get the D's and the S's together. Now we have a totally different situation, and how are they communicating? And at the end of the day, athletics makes you tougher, right? If you're in that environment. So the underlining is, hey, let's give a little grace when you're competing and you're in warrior mode, right? Because we're trying to win. But at the same time, be a little bit conscientious of, this is a human being. You may need to put your arm around them at the end of the game and be compassionate and empathetic. But it's sure as heck a lot better when you get the W and do that than lose, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So have you noticed with yourself, as far as understanding it deeper, has it affected you as a coach as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think as soon as you switch over from assistant to head coach, your level of patience definitely steps up, for sure. I think, I've always been taught be harder on the front end, so from that standpoint, I've made sure to do that. I think from an empathetic standpoint, I've also had to be a little bit more empathetic. I think DISC, because of my personality, and I think I'm a DC. And so it's like, it's great that my staff has a little opposite than me, because, that kind of works itself out with the team. But long answer is yes, I think it's helped just to continue to remind myself, okay, I need to maybe scale it back a little bit in some situations and not be as critical, because that seems to be my personality.
Yeah, no, and I've noticed in the conversations we've had, and even just the little I've seen you with the team, it appears to me that you're working. I mean, just the fact that you're digging in with homework assignments and you're having the players, and we even have had follow-up session and talking about doing more. That's a huge part of it, is just continuing to understand. Again, like you said, understand yourself, understand your players, have them understand themselves and understand each other. And just the fact that you're doing it shows them that it's important, and that it's something that is really a part of the game, and not just some tacked on thing that is like, well, let's just do this thing because it's the latest and greatest. No, this is really important, and we're going to apply it. So yeah, I'm excited to see how it continues to develop that culture that I know you want, and you're pouring into that team.
Yeah, I want to switch gears a little bit. We did a little bit of the disc stuff when I was at Baylor. I had Phil come in, and it was a great practice. And unfortunately, probably did it too late, because it wasn't long after I left, so I didn't get to see the full piece of it. But I found, even for myself, I would sit down before I would meet with a player, and I would look at their profile. It would help me kind of navigate how that conversation might go before it even, whether it's a good conversation or just a check in or whatever. It didn't really matter. I'm like, okay, I want to make sure I'm most prepared to meet with these players, and I found that to be pretty helpful in that scenario too. Have you exercised that as well?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely wrote down, especially when we're on the field, who needs some more positivity, and who needs kind of the one-on-one pull off the field, and you coach them that way, and not out loud. I think that's been the thing that's helped us the most, to try to get more out of the young lady. Because, a lot of players initially be like, oh, I need you to yell at me, but they really don't. They really don't want that. So I think that's been the challenge, to really just continue that open dialogue of, hey, we're coaching, we're not criticizing, right? And we're trying to get the best out of you. And just it's a constant reminder, whether it's within their disc or not, that we're a resource and we're here to help. That's the thing that I've kind of found of the how part changes with their personality profile.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, let's talk about you a little bit. All right, because this is about Keeley Hagen, the podcast about Keeley Hagen here. So let's focus on you a little bit. What are and I think this helps define who we are as people when we talk about just defining moments. What were some defining moments, maybe one or two defining moments in your playing career? What did you learn from that? How has that impacted, maybe you even as a coach?
Yeah, so I think there's two that stand out for me. One is the 2-year tryout for the U19 national team. It was literally 2 years. Within that 2-year period, I had a really bad ankle injury. I was out for, I think, 3 months. I missed the qualifier stage for the World Cup. So really had to fight my way back, and I was a captain at the time. And I think the perseverance there, the adversity, and just, I wanted to make the team. And so I had to work myself back there. And then we finally obviously got to the World Cup in Canada and went through the group stages, and I wasn't playing that much at all because I had just, been coming back. And finally we'd gotten to a team where I started to getting more minutes. And then the last game, the coaches were like, "Hey, you're going to start." The night before, I had food poisoning, and I woke up in the morning and I'd been puking all night. My face was like all green. And so they just gave me some medicine. They were like, "Can you go?" And I'm like, sure, let's do it. And, it's like when you flip that switch and you have the adrenaline, there's, 50,000 people there. It's an incredible atmosphere. There were 50 American fans, and it was just all of our families. And we ended up going into overtime. We ended up winning. And just the emotion that poured out of me afterwards, I was like stunned. But it was like, a moment where I was like, man, I just went through this entire journey, and you got what you wanted at the end. And sometimes you don't. And so I think that experience for me helped me mature, and I learned a lot about myself, that I could do more than I thought I could, and just, kind of catapulted me into the next phase of my career. I think the second one that stands out would be my third season playing pro. I tore my ACL that year. And it was like a losing season. And so, now things are going wrong, terribly wrong. And what is my response, right? How can I be a good teammate? How can I, still continue to model the person that I want to model, and despite the adversity? And so leaving that season kind of feeling empty, but also feeling like, what? It wasn't about the results. It wasn't about, our team results or personal results, but how did I respond during that time of adversity? What did people see? So at the end of the day, I left that season being like, hey, I was a good teammate, regardless of what happened, right? Because it's easy to be a good person when everything's going your way. And so I think for me, I was like, okay, like that's the person I want to be. I want to be consistent of who I am. And those were a couple moments in my career that challenged that.
Yeah, I think that's something that gets missed a lot as I think as players and as coaches. Sometimes it's those adversity moments that really kind of define who you are, and not just that, but also just the experiences you had help you relate to every person on your roster, right? I mean, you basically can look at your team and go, whatever you've experienced, I or you're going to experience, I probably have already, and that's such an important piece of being a coach, because you can look them in the eye and go, yeah, I absolutely know what you're talking about. They may not believe you right away, but it's true. And how have you seen, I don't love that you had to go through adversity, but I think now it seems like we try to avoid adversity. Players try to avoid adversity. Parents try to keep their kids from adversity. As coaches, we don't want our players necessarily to go through it because it may create other problems. How do you kind of navigate that adversity, or shying away from adversity problem, when you know, even through your own experiences, that those were some really defining moments for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think we just talk about it, and then we do it, and we remind them, and we talk about it again, and then we do it. So it's trying to put the words in the action of, hey, this is tough. It's tough for a reason, and it's going to make you tougher. You're only going to be tough if you're put in a tough environment. You can say that you want to be tough, but unless you actually go through it, it doesn't, as iron sharpens iron, right? So I think it's one of those things, is reminding them, because it's that important on a constant basis of, hey, failure is growth, right? I think Kobe Bryant doesn't believe in failure when he lost, right? And it's like, how can we grow when things are tough? What are you learning about yourself when things get hard? And so having those conversations and actually like acknowledging like, hey, I just did that, or hey, I didn't do that, and what did I learn about myself? So if it's something, in my mind, if it's something that's really important, you've got to talk about it and remind them every day. And that's one of those things that it's setting you up for what we're doing here now, is setting you up for life. So when you do have those hard moments, you can feel like, hey, I just went through 4 years of being a student athlete. It was really freaking hard, and I can do this.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I want to make sure we're clear that our listeners understand, Keeley. So if I just post on social media that I am tough, that doesn't, are you saying that doesn't make me tough?
Yeah, no, that's not gonna make you tough at all.
It's not going to do it. It's not going to do it.
Yeah.
No, I love that. I fully agree with you. The communication piece is so critical. And I think you hit it right on the head. I think there are a lot of coaches that miss that part. It's like, why don't they get it? Why don't they get it? It's our job as coaches to tell them again. Just when you think they've got it, you got to tell them again.
Yeah.
And then you're probably going to have to tell them some more. Right. And that's just
repeat.
kind of the role of a coach. And you can get frustrated, or you can push through as a coach. And if you do it long enough, you see the results down the road, where you get phone calls from players that say, I'm 30 something now, I've got kids, and man, I miss those days when we used to run fitness tests. I'm like, those are great moments as an old coach to get those text messages and phone calls, because you had a part in them becoming resilient and tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And you just described, so many areas of life there, Paul, right? I heard that. I remember Andy Stanley talking about that with vision. You got to talk about vision and keep talking about vision and keep talking about vision. And when you think you're so sick of talking about vision, you're probably about halfway there. And I think that goes for our teams too. We can talk about it. If you just say it once, and it's not gonna stick. And so you gotta not only say it, but you gotta show that it matters. You gotta live it out. You gotta be consistent. They're watching us as coaches for sure. This is something that I just wanted to kind of stay on that injury front for a little bit. What we talked a little bit about what it, taught you about life, and what you taught about leadership, and what taught you how you brought that into coaching, as far as that resilience and being able to empathize with the player, which is a big part of it. But what did those injuries really teach you about, just life and you personally, just your identity and what really matters?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the process. It's not necessarily one day at a time, but one moment at a time. So for me, taking over, being a head coach, it's a lot of prayer, because I don't know everything, and I want to continue to be in a humble state, and it's asking for help regularly. So I think that's consistent when you're, hitting some adversity and in injuries. It's all right, I got to do lunge for the first time, and it's that process, and just do it the best that you can. And if the doctors are telling you that everything's fixed, then great, trust that and do the best you can. And so that's kind of the message, I think, that we push a lot with our team, is it's about the process. How can you improve? If you improve, the team improves, and it's one drill at a time, right? And for me, that's life. We don't know if we're going to have tomorrow, so you got to make the best of today. And I know that sounds very cliche, but at the same time, like, I think we've all seen in the past 3 years, life can throw some crazy things at you with COVID and just all kinds of stuff. And we're pretty grateful for what we have and our health that we have. And so it's the moment by moment things that for me, that's what helped get me through. And obviously, again, my faith is just asking for help, and all the time. Not sometimes, it's all the time. Because the second you don't, you think you got it figured out, you don't. And so that's kind of my stance.
Yeah, and I know with my wife, she had four knee surgeries playing soccer. She actually played at Colorado College back in the day, and 4 knee surgeries. And I remember her talking about that, with our kids, even as our kids are playing soccer. And, she's saying, look, soccer can't be everything. It can't be all that you are. You have to be more than a game or a sport or whatever. And she goes, that honestly, she said, I'd never really thought about that until I was sitting on I saw the physical therapist or the, trainer more than I saw my coach.
Yeah.
And she said at that point, I knew what game wasn't going to be the pro route that she thought she might go, and all this other stuff. And what would you say to that kid that maybe adult that's going through that right now, as far as that side of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think you don't know until you go through it, right? Like you don't know what you don't know. And so how can you use people as resources, ask for help? I think that's a big thing. And lean on your family, lean on resources. I mean, it's until you go through it, does it actually impact you, right? And I think that's the empathy side of things. It's easier to be empathetic when, hey, I've done this. I know what that's like. But maybe sometimes it's just saying, hey, I'm really sorry you're going through this. And that person is like, okay, like, hey, you just got to keep grinding and just little by little. And you'll look back and see the growths and try to recognize and reflect those growths that you've had.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So switching gears a little bit, going away from you to the coaches that have coached you, and that you've played for. I know that you've been taught a ton by all the different coaches that you've played for, but what is one of the coaches that just sticks out? What separates him or her from the rest of those coaches? And really, how are you using those lessons today in your coaching?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd be remiss to not say Ange Kelly, because she recruited me when I was 16. And, other than, a few years that I was in Sweden, I'd always come back to Knoxville to train. And, I think she saw something in me that I knew was in there, but I kind of had a chip on my shoulder because I didn't make the national team until later, and really believed that she's the coach that could get me there. And she told me that, and obviously she followed through on that. But yeah, I mean, from 16 until 38, she was a big part of my life. She was the maid of honor in my wedding. And I can't say enough in terms of the first thing I took away from her as a coach was just mental toughness, and obviously her playing experience and background is phenomenal. And she certainly made me mentally tougher. But I think the thing that has been long lasting for me is based off of my personality. I'm very task oriented and not people oriented. I know that might surprise you guys, but she is very much a people person and one of the most generous people I've ever met in my life. I mean, she's taking care of me beyond and even my family, since I'd been coaching with her. So for me, it's just how do you connect with people? She is a super connector, and she is so good at making people feel comfortable and making a situation that could be uncomfortable comfortable. So I think that's the biggest takeaway for me is figuring out how to be more of a connector, because I'm more of like, hey, let's just get these tasks done and check the boxes. And she couldn't be more opposite than me in that, which is why I was a good assistant for her, because I could be a master of box checkers and she's walking around talking to all these people. And I'm like, Ange, what are you doing? You're not getting anything done. And she's like, no, actually I am, Keeley. And so that's really, she's been such a huge part of my life and still continues to be so.
And I will just encourage you to continue being who you are and doing what you do, because I can totally relate with Ange more than you. And I love when I find you to help me and, to be able to be that, because I will never be that really well. And if I have to, and same way, if you had to do what she does, you'd burn out real fast if you had to do that every day. So to find that person who can do that, and for you to be able to do what you do really well. And obviously, as a head coach, you need to wear that hat at some level, but you can also get a great assistant who does that too, and be able to, do what you do really, really well, and just kind of dabble in the other stuff so you don't burn out on it. And that's something that I think is a great lesson there too, that she probably, I'm guessing she knows herself really well. So she surrounds herself with people like yourself who will do those things she doesn't like to do. And, I'm sure she can, but you don't have to.
Oh, she definitely tells me she can do all the things that I can do, like for sure. Right. It's just, she just wants me to do them. So, but she knows how to do all of them. And that's the great thing about Ange is she will, if she absolutely needs to, but her and I worked together for 14 years. And so that's a really long time. And that's why it was a really hard decision for me to leave. I mean, I was in my comfort zone and felt like we were at a really good position to win. And obviously they did, which is awesome. And but at the same time, it's, it was time for me to step out in faith, and felt like it was the right decision. And but very difficult decision, really leaving my best friend.
Yeah, that's awesome. We talk a lot as coaches about building teams, right? Recruiting, bringing in the right players, but a lot of times we forget part of building a great team is having the right staff around you, right? And I feel like Ange has always done a great job of that, and I feel like we've been blessed. One, because me and Marcy were a great team and still are a great team, but and having Chuck around and all the different coaches, like building a team as a staff is almost just as critical, maybe not, maybe more critical than the team that you bring in year to year as your players. As you kind of went through the ranks of like, being an assistant coach and learning what that role was, what's some advice that you could give maybe some young aspiring coaches that are either about to become assistants or are currently assistants right now?
Gosh, yeah. So I mean, I think the biggest advice is trust your head coach and have open communication and ask the why, ask the questions, and don't assume. I think I got into a little bit of trouble with that, just being an assistant because Ange and I knew each other so well. And I was like, well, why are you doing this? But I could have that healthy dialogue with her and she would tell me. And so I think it's, as an assistant, you don't know everything that's going on behind the scenes that the head coach is having to deal with, for lack of a better word. So I think it's just trusting that, they have ultimately the best interest, for you, for the assistant, and also for the team. And then to just come ask so you can learn, because ultimately my job now is to help develop my assistants to be a head coach if that's what they want to do. So I also needed them to be challenging me, because I don't want yes people. So I think that's the second thing is be challenging to your head coach at the right time. I didn't do that very well with Ange. My timing was terrible. So that's another thing she helped me with. And then just ask questions. And the third thing is be as supportive and proactive as you can. I think that's the thing is, try to put the head coach lens on and think, okay, what do I need to be prepared for tomorrow? Or what do I need to be prepared for 2 days from now? Right. And I think those are the three things that for me as an assistant, I learned over the years. And there were times that I feel like I was great, and there were times that I felt like I was a really crappy assistant. And I'm sure Ange was so patient with me, which is one of her strengths as well. But obviously I give her so much credit for being able to be in this position now.
And I would say, Paul, like that, what you just described there goes for any, not just assistant coaches, but this leading from the middle concept. I think that right there was just gold for anyone that has leadership aspirations. But to be a great leader, you got to be a great follower, and you need to understand what that looks like and how you can actually lead from the middle by asking those questions, by challenging at the right time in the right way. And that's something that, we talk to even our players about. Is it's good to, challenge us in what we do, but in the right way at the right time, and not coming to us after a game and yelling at us and telling we did something wrong. That's not the right time, as somebody did this year. But to be able to do that in an appropriate way. And so I so appreciate that answer. I just wanted to go back, rewind that, listen to that again, because there was a lot of really important, good stuff in there.
Yeah, I was going to say that too, Phil. Just definitely young aspiring coaches, and even some of us are veterans. It's good to hear that again. So I would encourage you to go back and rewind that. And can you rewind? Is that what it's called? Just go back. I don't know if rewind my cassette tape days.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Don't
go
let the
back and
ribbon
listen to
get
that.
caught, and that if it breaks, you can't listen to it anymore. So
Absolutely. You just you just lost all the kids under 35 years old. But that's some great stuff. Through that process, Keeley, obviously you were blessed to have just an amazing mentor, as a head coach with Ange Kelly, and have interacted, had the opportunity to interact at a high level with a lot of high level coaches. But I don't know the best way to ask this question, but your role as an assistant, I mean, you kind of just went through the things that are important of being an assistant, but What are the things that you think you take from being an assistant for so long? What are the things you're taking from that have really set you up to be a successful head coach?
I
And
think,
let me add
yeah.
on to that. What are the things that you think you may have missed had you just gone straight into being a head coach and not having been an assistant?
Oh my gosh, I would have missed everything.
Yeah.
I said that because I worked at Texas, I feel like I can run the country. I mean, that's a joke, but like, there's so many things, as an assistant. I think, one of the really important takeaways that I heard from a coach as soon as I got this head coaching position was be organized. You've got to be organized. And as an assistant, we, especially when we took over at Texas, like that was the thing. It was like I was getting every little thing that makes up I say it's like running a small business, right? You've got so many pieces to the pie that has to be organized, from the top down, and how Ange wanted it done. And I think that for me, it was every little thing to your recruiting platform, to making sure your compliance issues are going well, to connecting with your alumni, to making sure your recruiting database is good. I mean, there's endless things that, as a head coach, it's like it just becomes second nature because I've done it so long and went through those processes so much. I'll tell a quick story. I'll never forget the very first time I went on a road trip as an assistant coach, at the University of Tennessee. Ange leaned forward and she's like, "Hey, we need to do," and she went through 10 things. We need this, we have to think about this. And I'm sitting there like my mind is blown because I'm like, wait a minute, like we don't just sit on the bus and hang out like because that's what I did as a player.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure I'm answering your questions, but just getting the repetitions of organizing the program and all the little finite details that go into it, because at the end of the day, you want your players to love to come to training, love to compete, and not necessarily feel the resistance that we have to go through as coaches because of, whether it's the administration or it could be a number of things. Scheduling, I mean, that's another thing that it's nonstop. So long-winded answer, but just getting those reps and asking questions and being a sponge and taking notes and being organized.
That's funny. Keeley, you just described yourself a little bit as a player and what you thought happened on the coaching staff. How many times as a coach do you hear from your players like, so like, when's the season's over? Like, what do you do? What do you do when you're not when you don't have to lead a practice? Like, oh yeah, we don't really do anything else other than lead practices. So
yeah. And sometimes I'll tell them, like, I'll just be like, hey, this is the deal. And you don't go into the details, but it's like, I'm sitting in this office and it's not like I'm just sitting here all day, like thinking about soccer drills. I mean, we kind of joked about that, 10% of our job is actually coaching on the field, right? And it is organizing so many other things. So the business is running and it's smooth, and it's somewhat of a customer service, but you're developing human beings who are the ages of 17, 21, and you want them to be able to leave your program having a positive experience, even though it's tough and they're going to hit adversity and they're going to be unhappy at times because they're not playing. It didn't pan out the way that they thought. So you've got to work through those conversations. It's a lot.
Yeah,
and you hit it on the head when you said it's like running a small business.
Yeah.
I mean, as you're describing this, it reminds me of like running a small nonprofit. It's the same. You're wearing a million hats. People wonder what you do all day. People are saying, "Oh, well, what are you doing? How come you're not literally feeding a kid? So what are you actually doing? I don't get it." And so we want to help people understand that these lessons we're learning, they carry over literally into everything you're doing. And so, I mean, it goes to being a parent as well, right, Paul? It's like, your kids wonder, like, what do you guys do when we're not at home? Like, you guys don't do anything. And then, oh, you actually work? My son, can you play, Dad? Well, I'm working right now. Well, when are you done? 5 minutes, 2 minutes? Like, how long is it going to take? Right. So I think that goes into so many different areas, and it's, I love that.
No, it's great. Keeley, you had an opportunity to play, at a high level with, a lot of great players. Are there one or two that come to mind that really impacted you? What were some of their great attributes as players that really left a mark on you?
Yeah, I mean, I think Christy Rampone was probably one of the biggest. That was my first year of pro. She kind of took me under her wing, and I played next to her as a center back. You talk about someone who has a lot of speed. First of all, it's like I thought I was pretty fast, and she just has this other gear. You're like, and I do have to tell a story about her, because I think she was like, I don't know, in her 30s or something. And it was year one. So 2009, I don't know how old she is, so don't quote me on that. But I just remember being like, oh man, my back of my leg hurts. And I was like, well, like maybe you pulled a muscle or something. She's like, what do you mean? And I was like, yeah, like you could have pulled your hamstring. She's like, oh no, I've never done that before. And I'm like, at 12 years old, I pulled a muscle. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like, but I mean, she's just so fit, leader on the field. And it's like, that's one of the big reasons why we were successful, is because she's a leader, a competitor, and obviously extremely durable as an athlete. And, she just helped guide me to kind of understand, like, the next level of being a pro and what that looks like. Cause it's, I'd call home and be like, Dad, it's a lot cooler saying I'm a pro than being a pro. And that's because it's like you could be so self-absorbed, and it's like, just because you sign a contract and get drafted doesn't mean you're on the team. And it's like every day I felt like I was fighting for my life, because I wasn't a full national team player like all the time, right? It was just a short stint. So it's like I didn't feel the security that you feel in college, and the kind of feel good moments. So I try to tell our players, like, hey, if you're going to go pro, like, you got to be ready. It's cutthroat. You have a job one day, you may not have one the next day. And so, those were the lessons that she taught me. So, at the end of the day, I mean, you play against Abby Wambach, and, for me, I played against her at Florida versus, Tennessee versus Florida. And you obviously admire her from a distance, but when we're playing, she's a forward and I'm a center back. It's like, all right, like I need to beat this chick. Right. So she kind of taught me that a little bit of a gamesmanship attitude of, hey, I'm a really good player, and I'm going to use the game to be able to beat you. And so that was kind of another layer that I was like, oh, okay, this is new. So those are probably the top two players, I would say.
Yeah, those are great ones. Rampone was a consummate pro. She was amazing, and anybody I've ever talked to that played with her, including my wife, just raves about not only her as a player, but just a person. Just really cared about her teammates, and one of the hardest working people out there all the time. That's just those are great. As we kind of move through this conversation, there's some questions we ask everybody as we kind of come through here. But this is a podcast about soccer and leadership, right? So that's kind of what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
But what are some of the lessons that you've learned directly from the game of soccer that you use just life in general, like maybe even in your marriage? What are some soccer lessons that leadership lessons that you're using in your marriage?
Yeah, I mean, I think, where do you start? I've when I took over as a head coach, I came up with my core values, and I wanted to obviously bring them into the program. And the way that we do them is we bring them in, and then the players define what each one of those words mean. Obviously, they're going to mean something to me, but we want to get our players bought in on what do these things mean to you. So I brought in what's the acrostic anchor. Part of that is because of my faith, and that's the anchor for me. So what it stands for is A is accountability, N is no quit, C is character, H is habits, O is opportunity, and R is responsibility. So the bookends, accountability and responsibility, for me, if you don't have those in a program, it's going to be really hard to be successful. So our players will define that, but I think what has soccer taught me? Accountability, 100%. Within that, it's developed my character on so many different levels. The game's 90 minutes, and you have the ebbs and the flows of things are going your way, momentum, and then all of a sudden you're not, and they're not. And so, how do you persevere through that? I think from a competitive standpoint, you got to fight every day in training if you want to get better. You've got to fight if you want to keep your spot, if you want to earn your spot, because it can be taken away from you quickly. I think from a habit standpoint, one of my least favorite quotes is, if it feels good, do it. Because I think nobody would wake up in the morning because we all just want to sleep in. So from that standpoint, if it's not feeling good, you probably should keep pushing through it, because that's making you better. So the habit standpoint is, we're really instilling, habits the game presents. It's from a technical standpoint, right? It's having the habit of keeping your head down when you're shooting. There's so many things there I can get into. And then the opportunities part, it's every day is an opportunity and to improve, and don't miss that day, because you could get hurt. And then how many injured players are like, oh, I missed the game so much. But when you're in your third month of spring and you're not hurt and you're still going, you're like, why do I have to be here? Like, not a good attitude, from an opportunity standpoint. And then certainly I'm not going to hit all of the core values, but the never quit. For me, that is just, in marriage, it's, you're a team. We call ourselves Team Hagen, and it's like, it's not an option to quit. And I can't remember this great Twitter thing that came out, but it was basically like, if you're fighting with your spouse, it's like, hey, come on in here, we're going to lock the door and we're going to figure it out, because we're not giving up. So those types of things, I think the game has given us so much, and that's what we want to give back to our players and say, hey, listen, just invest everything you can, because when you're done with the game, it has taught you so many incredible lessons that hopefully you can then give to others.
Yeah, those are great. Some great stuff there, Keeley.
Yeah, I agree. And, and that's why we do this show, right? I think the more this game becomes what it can give us, what it can get for us, more than anything, is what I think it's getting to for people. Can it get you a scholarship? Can it get you, whatever, the prestige, and to say my kid plays comp soccer or whatever. And I think it loses those lessons. That's why I look back and I love this game so much, is because those lessons, it can teach us about life. It can teach us about, how we can love better, how we can be committed to things, even when it's not comfortable. As we've talked about on this show, most of the great things in life happen just on the other side of comfortable, right? Like, that's when it's going to really get going. And so I think that's where, if we don't take those risks, if we don't take those chances, if we don't push ourselves, we're never going to see it. And those lessons that we can learn from this game, like that's why, I was like, hey, let's just do this thing and see how we can hear from other people like yourselves to say, what can we learn from it? What are we missing that we can learn better? And, I love it. I love learning from, folks like you and all the other people we've had on this show about these lessons.
Yeah, I think I'd be remiss to
Go.
say, just the last thing is just being on a team, right? You're going to go in the workforce afterwards, and people want to hire people that can work together. And so just, how are you as a teammate? I think that's some of my greatest friends are because we were teammates. And so learning how to work with people and how to be a good teammate and what that looks like on a regular basis. And I think for this generation, it's solving problems through texting and saying, hey, that's not gonna fly. And how can we integrate a little bit deeper relationships that are more meaningful of having the face-to-face conversation and that communication and that eye contact, which we all missed during COVID. And that's tough. And it's like, how can we get more reps to be able to improve the communication, to improve the relationships?
Yeah, no, 100%. Actually, on that note, I over the weekend did a little 2-day fast from my phone. I just stuck it on the charger, didn't pick it up all weekend. And even those 2 days, to see how much more present I was in every conversation in coaching. We had a game on Saturday, just seeing that, it was like, man, I got to do this more. It's so important. I think we don't realize how much we just look at that little thing and just do something, whether it's just killing time or even for information that we might deem important at that point. But I looked at my phone last night after 2 days and I was like, none of this stuff was urgent. I was with my family all weekend. So that was what's going to be the urgent stuff. So I didn't need it, and it was just this reminder of what's really important. So, All right, Keeley. All good things must come to an end. So this interview, I will finish up with how we finish up these interviews, which is, what have you watched, read, or listened to that has most impacted your thinking on how soccer explains life and leadership?
Yeah, I had to think about this a lot. I'm not a big reader. I'm a big listener. Like I listen to things because it's hard for me to sit down and read a book because I fall asleep really quickly. So I think just a couple books that I've listened to is the Chop Wood, Carry Water. That's been a big one for me just in terms of the process. I don't know if you guys heard that one.
Mm-hmm.
How it relates to the game. Once again, it's all about the process and putting the extra hours of repetition in that you need in order to improve your skill. We tell our players, even at the club level, it's not enough of what you're doing at your training. And that doesn't mean more is always better, but if you want to be a better passer, sometimes it's just hitting the ball against the wall and having those quality repetitions. So that book was great. And then the other one is One in the Dark, which is, I think they're actually the same authors. And it's once again, so much of me being successful was not necessarily my talent, but is what was I doing behind the scenes when no one else was working, right? If it was snowing, I was going for a 2-mile run because I knew it was going to make me tougher. And I knew I needed to work on my endurance. Or I was, taking time to hit a ball against a rebounder because I needed to hit a better, longer ball. And so it's those things that my teammates may not have known, or nobody knew, but I had to put those reps in. And so those are probably the top two right now for me.
You're not alone in those recommendations. The last person to recommend those two books was Corey Close, the women's basketball coach at UCLA, another amazing woman of faith. And I know she uses those books regularly as well. That's a great interview. I know you'd enjoy that as well. But yeah, no, those are great books. And I love asking those questions because, just selfishly, if someone recommends that book, if 2 people, 3 people on this show recommend those books, folks, you got to read them. It's like required reading now. If you listen to this show, you got to go out and read those books. And for no other reason than the people that we're listening to you, it's impacted them and made them better leaders. So I think that's why we're doing this. If you're listening to the show, chances are you are a learner and you are a great leader. So continue learning on that. Well, thank you so much, Keeley, just for who you are, for the encouragement you are to me. And Paul, I assume I'm going to speak for him because I've talked with him about you. And just that you are impacting lives in great ways. And so I just want you to encourage you to keep running the race. And thank you for being a part of this conversation.
Yeah, thanks you guys. And Paul, I need one of those hats. And Phil, you should wear that shirt all the time. And Paul, if you give me a hat, I will give you a shirt.
Oh, wow.
I like trades.
Yeah.
That's
good bartering. That's good bartering.
Are you double X, Paul? What are you?
Wait a minute. What? Are you sure? Did you ever coach against me? Did you?
You are retired, Paul.
Are you confusing me with Chuck? Are you confusing me with Chuck again?
Oh, wow. Okay, now
I just didn't want to say extra small. Just trying to make it better.
I'm good. I'm good with extra small. I can still fit in all of those. My belly hasn't gotten any bigger in retirement.
He can go to the gym with that extra small, and he could,
I can still see your chin, so you're doing great, Paul.
Yeah,
keep it up.
Yeah, he's got 4 little boys, not little anymore, but 4 boys running him around. So I think he'll be in good shape for a while anyway.
We all know it's my wife that keeps me in check.
Well, there's no question.
Yeah, my husband might say the same thing too. So, but hey, I just want to say I really appreciate what you guys are doing. I think it's awesome just to bring awareness, and at the end of the day, like, we're all trying to learn and get better, and I really appreciate what you guys are doing, and it's very helpful for people like me as well. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Keeley. Just stick around for a minute as we finish up. And, thank you folks for being a part of this. We do it. We do it for you. We selfishly like doing it for ourselves too. But if you weren't out there listening and learning from this, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. So thank you for investing in your life to be able to listen to this, investing in your people, just being a better leader for everyone in your life. And so, As you know, we have great resources that you can always access. You can go to warriorwaysoccer.com, learn about what Paul and Marcy are doing with Warrior Way. That great hat is one thing. Well, not the one he has on, because that is a limited edition. That is I only have it. I think I'm the only other one other than Marcy and Paul that have that. So, but you can get another great hat. You might be able to barter too. I don't know. It sounds like bartering is a way you can get one of those hats. But we also have Coaching the Bigger Game, coachingthebiggergame.com. You can go there to learn about how you can invest in your leadership. And if you're interested in that, you can check that out. But as always, we hope that you're taking what you're learning from this show and you're using it to be a better parent, a better spouse, a better leader, a better coach, better in all that you do. And you continually remind yourself that soccer does explain life and leadership. Thanks a lot. Have a great couple weeks.